distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you.
Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Walker Law, a boutique corporate law firm specializing in the representation of entrepreneurs. To find out more, visit their site at walkercorporatelaw.com. And Xero, are you still managing your books the old-fashioned way? Put the pleasure back into doing business with Xero's beautiful online accounting software. Go to Xero.com and use the promo code TWIST13 to get 6 months for free.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis. What an amazing episode we're having here of This Week in Startups, and I wanted to take a moment to thank our latest sponsor, Xero. Xero is managing, will help you. It's beautiful online accounting software. Let me just say it that way. And they will help you manage your books in a new, clean, easy-to-use fashion. It's easy to use, but it's also very powerful. The features include bank reconciliation, invoicing, online accounting, all that great stuff. And their ecosystem has over 200 add-on solutions for CRM, inventory, timesheets, job management, all that great stuff. So there's tons of plugins you can put into the system. They've got over 200,000 people using the system, 200,000 customers. Go to Xero.com and use the promo code TWIST13 to get, 6 months for free. No credit card is required. Log in anywhere, anytime, Mac, Windows, Chrome, whatever. iPhone, iPad, Android, whatever with the mobile app. It just works. It's great. Follow at Xero, Xero. And great new sponsor, great product, beautiful, simple. Use the promo code TWIST13 to get 6 months and stop paying for this really expensive desktop software that you have to keep updating and that you have to buy extra copies for. And then you're the CEO or the founder. You never know, how to get to look at your books. You should be doing this through a web portal. It should be easy. And it is easy now thanks to @Xero. Everybody thank @Xero for sponsoring the program. And everybody, please give them a try using the promo code TWIST13. Thanks so much, Xero. Let's get back to this very important episode. There you go. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming. And wow, there's a lot of people here. Thanks to our friends at WeWork. Big round of applause to WeWork. They got spaces in New York, LA, and San Francisco. And how many people here actually work at a WeWork space? So, yeah, good number of people. Is it nice? Is it fun? Okay, yeah. So lots of good stuff going on at the WeWork locations. And thanks to Scott Walker and Walker Corporate Law, and of course, it's Xero, right? Xero from New Zealand.
Not Xerox.
Xero. So thanks again for you guys sponsoring it. I've been really looking forward to having Swisher on the program because just in terms of writing and reading about the news, I think you're really the gold standard of journalism at a time when journalism is imploding and it's really getting worse and worse and worse. How hard is it to run a journalistic enterprise today when we see things like, I don't know, I don't mean to pick on anybody, but Huffington Post and Business Insider and BuzzFeed, it's all becoming, kind of like SEO and reblogging and not a lot of original journalism, not picking up the phone. And you have TechCrunch reporting that Google bought a company for $600 million based on a bogus press release that they never even called. Yeah. How embarrassing is the state of technology journalism today, in your opinion?
Well, that's a loaded question. Gosh.
Listen, I just went to the D conference, and I've been going for 10 out of the 11 years.
Well, let me just say we're
and
fantastic.
All you do is loaded questions.
Right, it's true. Besides us being fantastic, I think it's not that journalism is the problem. Is that it's a problem of what works and how to pay for it. I think that's ultimately what's behind like the listicles of BuzzFeed. I like a listicle. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like top funny things Kat said yesterday kind of thing. But you're right. It's a lot of it is regurgitating news or making it SEO friendly or making it entertaining. And so one of the things that we did when we started D was decided we're going to stick with news, which we like, and factually based, standards based, ethically solid news reporting techniques. And we felt like, and using a brand also, and we felt that that was very valuable. We just think that people really want that, and that eventually people will gravitate towards that, and eventually people will begin to understand that this is what's important in a very noisy world, that it sticks out. And one of the things, I think about a lot of things, like a lot of products. You don't like go to the store and say, "Give me the tainted meat, please. I'd really like that." Or give me your very worst, bartender. Give me your cheap crap. Right. People really like high quality stuff, and so our whole bet in the initial phases of doing All Things D was that people still wanted that. The second part that we did, I thought that was important, is that at the same time we felt like old media was really slow. And not very fun and not very personality driven. And so we felt that those were the good things to it. Like whatever you think of TechCrunch, they had an interesting personality. They had an interesting people that you knew, and I thought that was powerful. And they and others had a very quick way of responding to things. And we thought if you could do it super intelligently, super accurately, it would be valuable to readers. So it's not that complicated, really.
And are you able to do this? I mean, I know you have the conference business,
Right.
which is phenomenally successful and
Yes.
will assume phenomenally profitable. Are you able to do real journalism at the level you're doing it and make it profitable on the web? Or
Yes.
You are?
Yes, both of them are profitable. Both sides are profitable. One is more profitable than the other, obviously, but we don't consider it like that. We don't think of the conference as separate. It's the same people working across the same product, essentially. And I hate to call journalism a product, but that's what we're selling. We're selling a product. And so we think of it as like an ecosystem that for example, on the conference, when we had all these interviews with Tim Cook or Sheryl Sandberg or Elon Musk, which was a very successful interview. We used the conferences as the conference that people like to go to, and we charge a lot of money for. And then we used it for journalism. There were a lot of news that was broken. We cut it up into pieces. We focused on different things, and then we put the videos up immediately on the site. And so they all interweave with each other. So people like to always say, "Oh, the conferences make money, but the journalism does." The whole thing makes money, and that's what the part that we focus on.
And the constituents are the same. I mean,
Many,
Tim Cook comes to the event in a way, or he's incentivized to come to that event, not just because he doesn't need to be there.
No.
But the fact that it's also covered heavily in the Wall Street Journal, which is your parent.
They're not our parent.
Or investor, or...
No.
What is the relationship then?
With the Journal?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dow Jones, I'm sorry.
We're owned
Your
by the
sister.
same owner. We're owned by
yeah.
the same owner. It's sort of
Right.
like Barron's and Wall Street Journal. They're not...
Got it, your
the Journal-
peers. But
Yes.
the Journal is there.
Sure.
And that's a very powerful thing as well.
I don't think people are attracted to the journalists there. No, I don't think that's the case at all. I think people are attracted to the audience there. I think
Right.
smart people want to be in front of smart people. I think we gather a really influential audience of people. And so I think that there's more to it than wanting to be in the news. These people could pick up the phone and be in the news any day of
Right.
the week. I think it's the whole gathering of minds talking about whatever happens to be that year. I don't think they're there, to be written about. I don't think people covet the Wall Street Journal any more than they covet other websites
Are you
anymore.
bored with doing the event? I mean, you've done it for 11 years.
Yes, I'm bored out of my mind.
No, I'm just saying, and my perception, having been there
Right.
for, I guess, 10 of the 11,
Yeah.
when I was a journalist, when I was doing Engadget, you were nice enough to give me a pass, you have people like Tim Cook who come
Right.
now he's
2
a
years.
regular, 2 years in a row, and obviously with Steve Jobs, that's an exciting interview, but with
Right.
Tim Cook, is that a really boring and frustrating person to interview? Because I saw you getting kind of perturbed up there. And I'm not saying Tim Cook is boring or frustrating, but that interview,
That interview did not go well.
And the interview last year was, like, it was his first time, so it was interesting.
Yes.
But he doesn't
But I don't think
give
that
you
interview
anything.
went well either, yeah.
He gave you nothing.
He didn't. He's a very, he was an operator for most of his career, behind-the-scenes operator. And so I think that he's very like this. And
Right.
so he has a hard time explaining his vision or other things. We tried, but he wasn't giving. But then the next night we had a fantastic interview with Elon Musk, which was, I think, the best interview he's ever given. And I
Yeah.
was really enjoying it when we were
I mean,
interviewing.
people were very inspired by that. So
Yeah.
let's go through each of those individuals
Sure.
for a second, though. Tim did talk about,
Right.
for 2 years in a row, he sort of alluded to Apple TV.
Yes, he did.
2 years ago, he told you, we're going to follow the string and see where it leads
Right.
us. And then this year, he's like, well, our hobby is now pretty serious. We have, 13
Right.
million sold. And
Right.
so Are they going to launch a TV, and what's holding them back? When do you think it would arrive, in your opinion?
I don't know. So again, because I'm one of these factually based people, I couldn't know when they were going to do it. And
Well,
I
when
don't
you look in
happen to
his
know.
eyes and you...
I looked in his eyes and I could tell. If I could do that,
No,
that'd
but...
be fantastic.
Well, I mean, you're a journalist. You get a sense. I mean, is there
No,
a
I
sense?
really don't. I don't operate on senses. I operate on what I know. So maybe I do. People think I do that, but I actually don't. I actually call people with a little telephone and bother them and threaten to kill them and things like that. That's how I get my...
All right, well, how would you interpret his remarks then about the TV?
I would interpret that they're
'Cause he was
trying to do an
coy.
Apple TV product. I think they have to be in the home. There's just
Right.
no other way. The iPads fit in with, this is just me, my analysis, with no knowledge of what's happening. And by the way, Walt Mossberg never tells me what he's reviewing, so he hasn't told me what he's reviewing. So one time, Walt, when the iPhone, before it came out, Walt pretended he had an iPhone and said it was in his bag. The first time it came out, and I lunged for the bag, and he's like, "Oh, I don't have one."
That's pretty fantastic.
He did the same thing with the iPad, but he actually had one. I'm like, I'm not falling for that shit. And of course, he's like, oh, really? It's kind of cool. I think they have to be in the TV space. I don't think they have a choice not to be. It's really where everything's happening. It's where they're delivering information, and the intersection between television, iPads, and phones seems inevitable.
He kind of dismissed Google Glass.
Yes, he did.
Okay, so he just did. He didn't
Yeah.
kind of. And
He said it was interesting. That's like,
Well, yeah.
that's like when you meet someone at a bar and you go, oh, you're very interesting.
yeah, she's cute.
Well, no, cute is better than interesting.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's true. Yeah. Good point. But he did say he kind of liked this idea of there are other places you could put a computing on your body.
Right.
And he alluded to,
The watch.
I like to call it a bangle. I
Right,
think it's
okay,
going to be more
bangle.
like Wonder Woman, like
Yeah, that's
double
going to
size.
sell well amongst men. Would you like to buy a bangle?
I'm going to have bangles on both. It's
Well,
gonna
you're
be
very
spec-
secure in your sexuality, so.
I think it's going to be spectacular.
Yeah.
Now that is something that would be spectacular if they
Yes.
had a watch.
Yes, I think they're working on a watch. I think that's pretty well reported. We reported on our site that they were working on one. I think that's probably where they're going to be doing something in that space. I think his idea with the glass was that it's incredibly awkward, and what Google's put out right now is not where it's going to be,
Right.
which I think anybody could say that. That's
Right.
kind of an obvious thing.
There were a dozen people walking around with those
Yes,
things
I
on their
know.
faces at the conference.
Yes.
I banned 3 of them at my private after party
Right.
at the event. I literally took them off of Loic and
Yes.
Don from
I think
Smug
you said,
Mug.
you glasshole, take those off. Something
And
like
I literally took them and I put them in a cabinet above
You did?
the refrigerator. Do you like people...
By the way, the NSA was already there taping that. so
Of
don't-
course, yeah. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Do you believe, do you find it obnoxious when somebody comes up to you and starts talking to you with them on?
Let me give a full disclosure. My partner Megan works at Google X, which is
Right.
the home of Google Glass. And she came home with them months and months ago. And I was irritated then, and I'm irritated now. So,
So that's a...
yeah.
See, you give the disclaimer, you
Yeah.
think she's going to be like, they're delightful.
No, they're not
No, you
delightful.
hate them
Here's-
as much as the
Here's
next
what I
person.
did. I tell this story before, but I went to the Christmas party. I try not to go to Google events whenever possible because I've done them for enough years. You know, when
Yeah.
at the 10th year, I'm like, enough of these fucking geeks. I'm going to a good party.
Right.
But
What, you don't want to go to a party with 100 people staring at their shoes
well,
and
no.
phones?
What was interesting is everyone on the boat, by this
Right.
time Google Glass was out, and so they had a casino boat on the harbor here,
Mm-hmm.
and we start pulling out, and everyone on the boat has them on, like everybody, except for me.
loathsome.
Except for me, and so they're all going, okay, Glass, and then doing like the Saturday Night Live thing, this thing,
Yeah.
and they're playing casino games, and they when they say okay, Glass, it starts to activate someone else's glass, and literally the whole thing was like a vision of the future where I was like, I'm going to commit suicide right now. I'm going to
Yeah.
jump off this boat. So I literally went over to the shrimp. Of course, because it's Google, it's really nice food, and
Yeah.
so they have this giant mountain of shrimp, and I'm like, I go to the shrimp area and I don't leave until it docks again,
Right.
because I couldn't take this sort of vision of this horrible vision of the world of glass.
It feels like, the moment we're having here, a conversation,
Right.
those are special moments. This, to me, when I started talking to people, I had to ask them to take it off. I had to ask more venture capitalists. Like, I don't feel like I can have a great conversation with you with these on.
For some reason, they're obstructive as opposed to me with my sunglasses right in there because I'm trying to avoid intimacy. No, they're actually, I have a light problem and it's very light today. And these are
Yeah.
prescription. I think the way they are right now is not what they're going to be. So I suspect that this is just there's something about them right now that's very obstructive
Yeah.
between people. And I'm not sure what it is because people wear glasses all the time. So I'm not really clear what's going on. Maybe there'll be something that's more like this, where it's over here. But I think people can't, I mean, it's certainly better than someone sitting there like this, like, you know what I mean? So.
But you wouldn't do that, right?
Are you
Like,
really? I don't know where you
well,
live. People do it all the time. My child is
I
over there
just don't
doing it right
let
now.
people do that in a conversation with me. I just stop talking
Right,
until they put the phone away.
okay.
But maybe I'm just like an old school teacher
Yes,
or something
okay.
like weird. But
Yeah.
it's the issue of, I don't
Not
know if you're
knowing.
recording me.
Do you care?
I say some really, I say
Really?
stuff that shouldn't be
Oh.
recorded.
I don't know.
I mean-
I don't think that's the issue. I think people focus on that because it's like kind of like a good media story. Oh,
Yeah.
what are they looking at? Oh, in a bar, women's boobs, you know, that kind of stuff. Because those are good media stories.
Right.
But I think the issue is if it becomes wearable and usable in a useful way, people will use them. And people will get used to them. Like, remember the cell phone. People
Right.
were irritated by people on the cell phones. I happen to have a suitcase phone when I was starting off my career, and I loved it. And people were annoyed by it when I used to have I had that big Gordon Gecko phone
Yeah.
for a while. And so, and I was in love with that phone. So,
What was your first job? What was your first act of journalism?
active journalism?
Yeah, what was the first act of journalism?
I was the
Because I
year-
could say when you got paid
Yeah.
to do journalism, but I think active journalism.
I was the yearbook editor at my high school, which is a position of immense power in high school. You know that picture is the way it's going to be the rest of your life when you go back.
Yeah.
You know, so I was that, and then I worked for my college newspaper at Georgetown University, and I was writing for it. I was writing columns and things like that. It was called the Hoya. And I was writing stories for it, and I had written a story. The way I got into professional journalism was I wrote a story. Roberto Dobuizon was visiting the campus. He was a horrible killer in El Salvador, and he gave a speech, and Georgetown brought him in, which was appalling in and of itself. But he was speaking there, and they had already had Archbishop Romero. This is a long
Yeah.
history of El Salvador, excuse me. And so I wrote a story about it, just a factual news story of what he said, and then I compared it to the Washington Post story. I just was reading the Post story, and the Post story was full of errors, and I was really irritated, because of course they had sent their ninth string person to cover the Georgetown speech. I didn't
Right.
think about it like that, but I was so angry at the number of errors. I got a phone, which was attached to the wall, and I called up the editor, the Metro editor at the time, who was Larry Kramer, who's now the editor of
Yes.
USA Today.
Right.
And I said, I started yelling at him. I said, how dare you have so many errors
You're
in this
22
thing?
years old at this point in time? 21?
19.
You're 19.
19. Yeah,
And
18. Could've
so
been
you haven't
18.
changed much.
No, exactly. I was like, you fucking idiot. How dare you
Yeah.
write it? How dare you send a reporter and be full of errors? And I love the Washington Post, and how could you do this? And blah, blah, blah. And he literally was like, come down here and say this to my face. And so I got on the bus. I went down the M15 bus. I said, okay, fine. And so I went down there, and I met with him, and he was like, I wanted to meet the most obnoxious first phone call I got. So he hired me on the spot, actually, to be a stringer for Georgetown University.
At the
and I
age
wrote-
of 19.
19, I think it was, yeah, it was,
Yeah,
I
it's
went to
incredible.
school a little earlier. Yeah, it was about 19 or 20 at the most. I had done other internships and
Was
stuff
that
like
the
that.
moment, though, that you knew journalism was for you, that you were writing a story that was better
Yes,
than
and it was better, let me just tell you.
one of the top 2 or 3
Right.
papers? Is that when you just said, like, hey, this is
This is
for
wrong.
me?
I was angry at the errors, that the people were so sloppy and lazy. I was really irritated by laziness and sloppiness, so
And
I was mad.
what is
about
it you love about journalism? Because you've made a career of it, you've dedicated your life to it.
Well, not being sloppy and lazy, and really taking it seriously. Like, for example, the layoffs at Zynga last week. You know, we reported the exact number. Other sites were reporting much higher numbers, and I was really irritated that they didn't take the time, because these are people's lives. You know what I mean? That it's endemic on you to get it right. And so I think it's really important when you're a journalist to really care about getting it right, and when you don't get it right, feel terrible. And that's one of the things that I find irritating right now, what's happening, is that people don't care. They just move on to the next thing. Oh, well, I didn't get it right. Oh, well, it'll correct itself. You know, it's called process journalism, and I think it's like processed cheese. You know what I mean? It's really
This
bad.
process journalism is kind of bullshit. Like, when we
Process
made-
journalism, I got it wrong the first time, but what the hell?
Yeah, it's a nice name to put on being lazy
Or whatever.
and just not caring. I mean,
It's conceptually the idea, well, I heard it and it could be true, and, you know, it's sort of like a broken clock is right twice a day kind of theory, but It's not how we conduct journalism. And so the thing that attracted me to journalism in the first place was, one, I was actually in the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown, which is another word for going into the CIA kind of
Right.
thing. Either the State Department or the CIA, and I was headed that way. I really was. I thought I would be an analyst for the CIA. One problem with that was that I don't like keeping secrets. So I do like spying. And other
The
things.
folks at Yahoo have noticed.
Yes, exactly. I live there in the heating duct. People don't believe me, but I do. But I like the idea of analysis and stuff like that. So I was going to go into one of those jobs. And two issues I had there was, one, again, I liked secrets being out in the open, was one of my that's the way I am. And secondly, at the time, I'm gay, and at the time, gay people were not welcome in those departments, at either the CIA or the State Department. It was very difficult. I had one discussion with someone there where they were like, well, the reason is because you could be blackmailed. And I said, but I'm out. How can you blackmail an out person? That's kind of ridiculous. And they're like, but you could be blackmailed. And I'm like, but it was like one of these circular conversations.
Yeah, but I'm already out.
And they're like, well, they could blackmail your mother. And I'm like, why would they do? I literally was like,
Your mom, yeah.
And then they're like, well, what if you go to Saudi Arabia? They kill gay people. I said, well, let's not send me to Saudi Arabia then. Like,
Yeah.
I don't speak Arabic, so I don't know why I would do that. But anyway.
How do you, as a gay woman,
Yes.
how do you reconcile the fact that you have less rights to get married, and your career choices were determined by something so personal?
Oh, I wanted to be a journalist. I wasn't going to.
No, I know, but it has to perturb you. I mean,
Well, everything perturbs me, but what?
Well, I mean, how do you? I mean.
Oh, the rights of gay people?
Yeah,
I'm tired of getting sick of it. I'm tired of being angry. The other day, someone was. I have this new stance. I turned 50. I had a stroke a couple years ago.
I remember, yeah.
And then I turned 50, and I've decided now that I'm just not going to take any more shit, even though I don't take a lot of it.
Right.
And so one of the things I did was, someone was talking about gay marriage, and they were like, well, it can be debated, this and that. And I go, no, you're just wrong. And they were like, what?
Yeah.
And I go, there's no debate. There's no debate about it. It's like debating like pedophilia. It's like not good. Like we're not
Right.
going to go,
Right.
It's just you're wrong. And they were like, well, there's other opinions. I said, there's no other opinion. There's wrong and right, and you're wrong and I'm right. And so they were like, well, you can't do that. I said, no, it's my policy to do this now. It's my policy to say you're wrong. And they said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I've decided after I turned 50 that I would have policies. Do you know, like in a swimming pool, they have no running?
Yeah, no running, no peeing in the pool.
Right.
So
now,
no assholes.
No, exactly.
No bigots.
No, you're wrong about gay marriage. You're wrong.
Right.
Whatever. And so I said, it's my policy to tell you you're wrong, and I can't really vary from it. I'd like to be able to be open and honest with you, but I can't because it's my policy. So now everything is a policy. So things
Right.
I don't like is a policy.
I like that. It's
Like, sometimes, and I like PR people, but some PR people I don't like. Sometimes they want to
that would
always
be
have
most,
these.
yeah.
No, I like a lot of them. Someone wants to have an extended lunch with me. I'm like, oh, I would love to, but it's against my policy. And they seem to be okay. They're like, oh, okay.
It's like we're authorized.
No,
right?
but right, when you say policy, they stop bothering
Yeah.
you. Try
So,
it. Try it.
Was
Use the
it
word.
who did you get into it on Twitter with about gay marriage, and then we'll move
Yes.
on to other
Oh,
stuff.
gay marriage. Oh.
Was it Meg Whitman or who
Oh,
was
not
it?
on. No, that was at Sheryl Sandberg's living room that I got into with Meg Whitman.
Well, tell us what exactly happened, because Meg Whitman is a bigot. What's the story?
No, she's not.
She's wrong.
She was wrong
She
then,
was
and
wrong.
she's now not wrong because she turned the table. She signed that.
Oh, she flipped and
She did.
got
so
on the
to speak.
side
She
that's
didn't flip.
winning.
She's still married to her husband, but she was against it. She voted. We were in her living room at Cheryl's. This has been reported, so I don't mind talking about it because it was a private thing. But we got in an argument about it, and she said, she had all kinds of goofy reasons for it. In reality, she wasn't really for it, and so I asked her if she had voted for Proposition 8, and she wouldn't answer. And I said, well, you're running for office. You really have to say, at this
Yeah.
point. So she said she did, and then we ended up having a big argument about it, very heated argument. And Megan, my partner, who's like, as you know, is like Gandhi, like the person
Right.
I'm married to is like, it's oddly enough, she's literally like
Actually,
Gandhi.
kind of makes sense.
Yeah, so it got very testy between us about how she was.
How testy? Which part? Did you
Very
tell her to
testy,
fuck
I would
off,
say.
or was
No,
it like gonna go to blows?
she was like, don't get emotional about it. I said, I'm not emotional. I have less civil rights than you do. I have less tax rights than you. I'm like, that's not emotional. I said, you're the one that's emotional over this religious crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we went back and forth, and so Megan finally intervened and said, well, Meg, like George Wallace years ago with civil rights, we knew he was wrong, and he didn't know he was wrong at the time. Later, he did know he was wrong, and we all know you're wrong, and we forgive you for it.
Wow.
And
Wow.
literally, she was like, I've been nice to death, like, and someday you'll understand. And so she's, you know what, she's done the right thing now, so I'm perfectly happy with Meg Whitman's stance on gay marriage.
So back to journalism.
Yes. By the way, only gay people want to get married and join the military. Think about that. There's something wrong with gay people, don't you think? Seriously.
Yeah.
They're like, let's get married and join the military at the same time.
Yeah. Which is more challenging?
Yeah, it's true. I've been gay married 4 times.
You have?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. I won't go into it, but I've been gay
Yeah,
married 4
wow,
times.
had no idea.
Well, a friend of mine who didn't want to marry his girlfriend, I said, get gay married. They'll take it away from you every 6 months. So
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I got it.
he was like, can I? I'm like, sure, anyone can get gay married. So
Well, let's go into the spying thing, because I think that's a nice segue, because you did want to be a CIA kind of person, and
Right. Or
I
State
saw
Department.
Zero Dark 30, and kind of
Right.
like I'm...
Or
ma-
State Department.
The State Department is kind of making sense to me. We have a big news story going on right now,
Yeah.
which is we live apparently in a police state where every technology company is giving server access to the NSA through
Well, they
PRISM
say
or
they're
not.
Or not. It's
So-
very confusing. It's like clear as mud right now, right? Which
So
is
you
just how
have-
the CIA likes it, right?
Just to go through it, we do have proof, or what we think is proof, that more slides from a deck that say...
Well, it's slides from a deck. That's
it
not
is slides
proof.
from a deck. That is not proof, you're right.
No.
But I think that's what we have.
You know, it's questioning. I've heard like 10 theories today, just that are all different. That the slides were put out by this person to create this kind of FUD, and you know, it's not clear because every company has denied doing this except through legal. You know, when they asked for a legal process, the government asked for information. Every single company has said essentially the same thing, that they don't do it without a legal document that they keep, that they put on their transparency reports or whatever. So it's interesting, you know, and then someone else was like, well, they said exactly the same thing. I'm like, well, how many ways can you say you didn't give information? So it was just, and then I just got an email from someone that said the top, 20 executives at Google are all top CIA agents. I got that email today.
Right.
Expecting more of
Everybody
those.
knows it's only the top 7.
Right, yeah, exactly, whatever. I was like, I don't know. So I think it's really not clear as mud what's happening. I think, you see, it sounds stupid, but you see a lot of Hollywood movies that sort of show what it would be like. I don't know if you've seen The Bourne Identity or any
Yeah,
of those.
sure.
Or any of those movies. They're always like in 2 seconds they can locate someone by their keystrokes or whatever. So I think there's no question government's been spying on all governments, not just our government,
Right.
but all governments have been spying on its citizens forever. This just sort of started the conversation again, making us very aware of what's probably
It
happening.
does seem to be at a different level than we
Really?
can conceive of. I mean, to be taking every single Verizon phone record, the duration
Well,
of
the
the calls,
call stuff
the
is
cell
really, I
towers.
think that's where the real action is in these phones.
Yeah.
And how people tracking their phones. And I didn't think they weren't. I thought they were the whole time. I don't know, I just didn't
So it's
imagine.
not surprising to you. Well, what do you think?
I'm appalled like everyone else about much of it. Like, what's the point of it? Like every other government attempt to sort of pull in, like just any other government have to push into the bedrooms of people, into the private lives of people. They do that all the time. It's just that they have these tools now enabling you to be able to do it with really speed and mass. And so that's what's more disturbing, is the ability to really do it in a really major way.
What role do leading internet companies have in this regard then to protect their users?
Yeah, resisting it. Resisting, any kind of, you go back to the Pentagon Papers, you go back to if they, I don't know if you saw all this stuff that's been uncovered that years later that got revealed about what the FBI was investigating back in the 60s. They were doing this stuff then, they just had different methodologies of doing it, and it was harder. And so they've always had this proclivity to think everything is classified. And I think what they're doing now is because of 9/11, and they do have a job to do. By the way, they do have a job to do. Like, let's be honest, this is not a safe world. We live in a world, our country lives, even despite 9/11, we live in a very different world than the rest of the world does.
Right.
And we've been very lucky in terms of not being subject to what many countries are subject to. But the fact of the matter is and there should be protections in place to try to find terrorists, to try to look them down, but the government always overreaches. Governments always overreach, and I think that's the issue, is how much are they overreaching? And if they are, what will these companies that have a vast amount of this treasure trove of information do? I think the only one that matters is Google,
Right.
really. That's it. Google's like a nation state into itself in a weird way, if you think about it. Think about the massive amounts of information they have about people.
Should they be rolling back the information they're actually keeping? Should they start saying, hey,
Is that possible? Do we know? Do we even understand it? I mean, that's the problem. The problem is our government, probably most of the government regulators and the politicians that are watching these agents don't even understand it. That's, you know what I mean? Like, they're like, oh, the politicians in Congress are monitoring this. They don't have any idea, you know, the level of spying that can be done now. Neither do I, by the way.
what's your take on WikiLeaks and somebody, I mean, because obviously you want freedom, you've
Yes.
said that before, you want information out there. Do you think Bradley Manning giving away the entire database without reading it, and I don't mean to preload the question, but that is the fact, to someone like Julian Assange, who also didn't read it,
Right.
and just publishing it, do you think that's something that shouldn't be punished, that should be applauded? It feels to me different than journalism.
You know, it's, you know, you remember the Pentagon Papers. I was
Yeah.
very affected by that. I remember thinking about, I don't know if you all remember if you
Yeah.
were around when the Pentagon Papers were around, but I mean, I think the newspapers involved were very responsible in how that came out. And the government pushed really hard. I mean, Catherine Graham almost went to jail.
Right.
So I think that, you know, if there are really great media organizations, there should be some level of judgment of what to put out, because you can put people in danger. We do have, you know, national interests that need to be protected. Again, I'm someone who, it sounds weird, but I'm very patriotic. I understand the difficulties of this world, and I think it's really, you know, just putting it out there without any kind of judgment is just the same as publishing a story that's wrong, like the Google thing you talked
Yeah.
about. I mean, it's interesting about that story. It's the same thing. It's the same level of who cares. Well, I care. You know, who cares if it's not right? So we'll fix it the next
It's an
go-round.
indifference to facts, it's an indifference to quality, it's just an indifference
And something,
to
I mean,
truth.
but in the WikiLeaks, some of the stuff was silly that went out, who cares? But I think if you're a diplomat and you say kind of rude things about another country or another diplomat, that should probably be, you know, protected a little bit.
Yeah, parse that out and let's get
Or
to the
something.
stuff that
I mean,
matters.
there's, you know, you have to really think hard. I mean, many times I've held stories because someone's given me a good reason, like a layoff, for example. Sometimes I do find out much earlier, and I will hold it because I'm like, well, they should be able to tell their employees as long as I can get the news out rather quickly. There's no reason for me to rush it out.
To cause pain and damage.
Yeah,
and
why? For what? For what? And so in the case of
To
like
get the scoop and get the page views, of course.
yeah, but that's ridiculous. It's not that. It's not worthwhile if you're being, you know, irresponsible. I think there's a responsibility journalists have, and it's a noble thing to be. To me, it's a noble thing. Like,
What's a story you killed that maybe you regret killing that eventually came out? What can I say about the Walker Corporate Law Group? Scott Ed Walker, personal friend of mine. He does a tremendous job helping startups. He is a fan. He is a super fan of This Week in Startups and startups themselves. He's got a great, great boutique law firm. What does that mean? He will do flat rate, fixed fee pricing. So he will tell you it's going to cost this much to set up your corporation, this much to do your angel round, this much to do your A round, and he's going to stick to it. And if he doesn't, you call me, and I'll make sure he does. But he is a great, great attorney. He's got all these great attorneys who worked at the big firms for 10 or 20 years. So you're not going to get any junior associates working on your account. He's super qualified, and he genuinely loves entrepreneurs and working with them. He's a brilliant guy who worked at a big firm. He could work anywhere he wants. He could probably make twice as much money, frankly. But instead, Scott Walker of the Walker Corporate Law Group has decided he wants to work with founders, just like me. And he's a great guy. I hear great things from every client who uses him. They did Mighty Text, and they first engaged Walker Corporate Law with their $2,900 all-you-can-eat startup package, which is a great deal. They do mergers and acquisitions. They do licensing agreements. They do terms of service and privacy policies. They do it all. You can call Scott Walker directly at 415-979-9998. That number again, 415-979-9998. Fixed fees, billable hours, they believe rewards inefficiency. I agree with them. These legal issues, you shouldn't have this like sticker shock every time you open up that PDF sent from your law firm. You should have calm, comfort, and the ability to plan out your legal expenses. And this $2,900 all-you-can-eat startup package is fantastic. He really gets it. Scott at WalkerCorporateLaw.com, Scott at WalkerCorporateLaw.com, or visit WalkerCorporateLaw.com. 415-979-9998. And thank you at Scott Ed Walker. That's his Twitter handle. Everybody say thank you at Scott Ed Walker. If you get value from this program, and we charge so much for this program, $0.0. the favor I ask is that you thank the sponsors on Twitter. You don't have to do it every time, but if everybody does it once a year, it really helps the sponsors understand that there is a big, powerful audience out there. So go ahead and thank @ScottEdWalker from the Walker Corporate Law Group. Let's get back to this very important episode.
I didn't kill any so far. I've got a really interesting one on Yahoo now that I'm holding for a while for a good reason. I'll just
Really?
say that. Yeah. Small, but I...
How
there's
the
no
hell
reason
do
to-
you know everything going on at Yahoo? I mean, is it just...
I don't know.
Because you know a lot about a lot of companies. You have a great network,
I
and
could
I've
do
seen
that
you
with
operate.
any company. I could do that with any company I want.
You call people on the phone.
Yes.
You have a phone.
Yes, I have a phone. I
It's an incredible technique.
I use phones, I use texts, I try to protect my sources a lot. There's all kinds of ways to do that. I'm not going to go into them, but
Right.
there's all, because, these companies are trying to find out how I find out about things. And so do, by the way, hedge fund people and those kind of people. So you have to be really careful and responsible with the people you're talking to. I mean, Yahoo is just one I happen to be interested in, but I could do the same thing with if I really took an interest.
And
I always call myself Sherlock Homo now. That's how I mean, really, seriously, because like the Tumblr thing, for example, we got the scoop on the Tumblr deal.
Yeah.
I heard the tip I got was not Yahoo, a content company is being sold for close to $1 billion. It might be in New York.
hello.
Well, I said Tumblr. I mean, that was easy,
Yeah.
but he was like, but ultimately, I don't even think New York was in the first tip. I think I got it in the second part. But it was just like a tiny little scrap of something I got on a Tuesday.
Right.
And so then I sat there and I, just like you do in this, actually I use very similar techniques to if you were an analyst in the CIA kind of thing. I do scenario building, and I think, what could Marissa Mayer be up to? And then I make a list.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, if I'm Marissa, what do I buy? And then I make my list. I pretend I'm her. I make the list, and then I think, what is possible for me to buy? And then I X things out, and then I think, what would I be likely to do based on past history and stuff like that? And so I literally start making scenarios up. Of the 10 I make, one of them is always right. So
what do you think
So I did that I got to Tumblr eventually, and then I got to Yahoo.
what would be on the top 2 or 3 for her to buy that she couldn't buy?
That she
Pinterest?
couldn't?
Yeah, because you said
Twitter.
you're making this sort of Twitter. They'll never sell to Yahoo.
They won't sell, and if they sold, she's never going to be able to she doesn't have enough money compared to everyone else who would be in that game. That's a good example. That's a good exercise. I think, okay, that would be a really good purchase for Yahoo maybe. Could she get it? Actually, no, because Google will put up, if she puts up $7 billion, $10 billion, they'll put up $10 billion in one. Like,
Right.
they always have an ability to outbid her. So in that case, that would be something I don't think would ever happen unless there was some weird mind meld between her and Dick Costolo, which I don't see coming.
No. She's been in the job for a year. What grade?
Almost a year, July.
Yeah. What grade would you give her?
Good grade for image, excellent, as usual.
A for image,
A for image. I call it jazz hands. She has great jazz hands.
which is like, we bought something special over here.
Oh, Tumblr, free iPhones, free food, which everybody else has, by the way.
Yeah.
FYI.
Catching up.
Catching up. We're fixing this. And then actually fixing products that needed fixing. That was great.
Yeah.
Pushing them through. I'd give her an A
Oh,
on
so
that.
now we're getting to brass tacks. What do
Yeah.
you give her on actually running the business?
I think this new search stuff is nice looking. I think the new, I thought the homepage, I don't know why you fixed that homepage. It's sort of like fixing up, she put a really nice paint on the
Classic house,
Classic
yeah.
house, like,
Yeah.
so that to me is fine. I think some of the improvements in the way they stack rank employees is very clever. I think the food is
What does that
important.
mean, stack rank the employees?
Oh, it's just a way to, you grade people on, it's a Google thing. You grade, I don't hardly understand it, but they do 360 evaluations and then you grade people. I don't know how she's doing it, but you rank them on their abilities, and then if you're in the exceptional range, I think you get stock. If you're not, you're like the
Cash
unwashed.
comp.
You're like the unwashed over here, like
Got
you
it.
don't get anything. Cash comp, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was clever. I think that's important. I think her public image is important because the Yahoos feel good about themselves again. That's good. If someone likes your CEO and has popular, that's really good for morale. I think she's been great for morale. I'm still like watching the results continue to be like crappy. So that's the issue.
Could anybody in that job change the
I don't know.
results?
I don't know. But I'm just
Yeah.
saying her job is to get engagement up. Her job is to get page views up. Her job is to get revenues up. And when you see Google and others have huge leaps in revenues and page views and they still continue. Now maybe she needs more than a year. Maybe it's a couple-year thing. That's where I watch is where's the actual results away from all this jazz hand. Like that's good, And that's probably a really good thing, but it's just, I'll wait and see if it actually has a result on the core business, which nobody's paying attention to because they got all this Chinese money over here. They got piles and piles of Chinese
The
money.
Alibaba money.
Sure.
You're not using
and
that
by
as
the
like
way,
a colloquialism. You're literally
no, the
talking about Chinese money.
Yeah, it's the money from their asset. And so
Right. They
that's
own a third of Alibaba.
They own, it's less now, I forget what they own now, but anyway, they
Yeah.
sold a bunch, got billions, it's going public, they're getting billions, then they get billions more.
Yeah.
It's, it's like having, having bought a lottery ticket and then they
Yeah.
win. And by the way, Jerry, for all the crap I've given Jerry Yang, he bought that item
Sure.
many years ago for $1 billion. She should send him a big fat thank you note because she's got this money. And that'll keep it lifted for a while. And maybe she can take that money and make it into something. That's a way to do it. It's just hard. I think that I'll look at the core business. When they make a product that I go, oh my God, I have to have that, that's when I'll say success. When they make Instagram, when they make, I love Waze, for example.
Yeah.
I happen to love that. When they make Waze, I'll be like, go. If she makes a product that really is fantastic, or she and her team, or if the revenue goes up, I'll go, that's where the real.
I actually had a moment where I said, this is a beautiful product, and I was referring to Yahoo.
Which was that, the Flickr?
The weather.
The weather, oh yes, but that was made by David Kenny, interestingly
Oh,
enough.
okay. So that came pre-Marissa? or-
Yes, no, it came from weather.com,
Oh, okay. 'Cause
run by, who was a
beautiful,
former board member.
just gorgeous weather out that looks
But that
like,
was from
you know,
outside the
state-of-the-art.
company.
Oh.
Yes, it was, I'm glad they used that, but it was still a weather.com effort, which I thought was beautiful with the pictures.
Let's talk
Yes,
about
that's a good idea. Let's do
Steve
that.
Jobs for a second.
Yes,
You interviewed him,
6 or 7 times?
yeah.
I mean, on stage.
On stage, yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen him elsewhere, but yeah.
What do you think his contribution was? I mean, it's kind of a corny way to ask the question, but, do you really miss having him in the industry?
Yes, very much. I think so. I think the industry misses his sense of romance. There's a lot of downsides to Steve Jobs. We've all read about them. You know what I mean? Sort of. But I think he lent an air of romance and vision that was really interesting. Whether you talk about jazz hands. That guy was like, wow, you just, whoa, right, okay, whatever
Yeah.
you say.
The
Like
reality
digital
distortion
chocolate.
thing.
Yes, of course. Why didn't I think of that? But I think he lent it was interesting. Walt and I were talking about it. One of the things he did is sometimes he would say nothing on that stage. Nothing.
He'd say it well.
He'd say it well. And you'd be like, yeah, that was really a deep interview. And I'd be like, he didn't actually say something, but nobody cared
Right.
because of the way he said it. And, well, that's like not a good thing to not say anything. He did forward someone a vision of what was coming next. I think he reminds me a little bit, we were trying to compare him. Is he Thomas Edison and Gates is Henry Ford, if you start to go back
Yeah.
in history? Henry Ford, both very important figures. One, actually, Thomas Edison, much more tragic than Henry Ford, if you think about it. But it's a really interesting that you need those kind of inspirational figures because he did, the iPhone changed everything. The iPhone changed this entire internet industry, and where it is now is because of the iPhone and the impact it had on others and how people designed, how Google changed. Everyone reacted to it, and I think being the person everybody reacts to is something that's missing right now in our.
There's a void in the industry.
Yes, react to. Like he put something out there and then like a piece of art, and it was a piece of art, it is a piece of art, and everybody went, oh, and then possibilities became endless kind of thing.
Who do you think is the heir to Steve Jobs?
Do we have to have one?
Well, somebody has to be the best product visionary now that he's gone. If he was the best product visionary, if he was the...
I think these things
the
come
great
in once in a lifetime. I don't think there is one right now. I think people
Okay.
really like Elon. I think people really reacted well. It was interesting leaving that interview, all these men were like, I love him.
There's a lot of bromance going on.
No, it was not bromance. It was full on
Just
man crush. Oh my
man
God!
love.
Like like I was like, what was it? His giant arms? What was? Because he has these fantastic guns that he has on.
Yeah.
And it was really an interesting. It was really interesting. People wanted to be inspired, and they were inspired by him. So I thought that was his ability to do that, and he's very soft-spoken, which I think was interesting. And one of the questioners got up, I think you might have missed this, during the Cook thing and said, we want to dream. And this guy, fantastic hedge fund guy actually, or investor guy, and I can't remember his name, he got up and said, you remind me of Michael Spindler, which wasn't a very nice thing to say to Tim Cook. Or something like, we don't want you to become Michael Spindler, something like that.
Right.
But he said, but his whole essence of his question was, why won't you let us dream anymore? Why
Right.
won't Apple let us dream anymore? And I think nobody has to be let to dream, but if something inspires you, you start to do things, I think. And that's, when you see, I don't know, a moonshot or, that's the Google expression now. And
Right.
a lot of it is actually some of it has come from Google. And you can make fun of the glasses. I think the car is a huge idea.
The self-driving car, clearly.
There's no person behind. I guess Sergey would be someone I would say. I guess, the car is a big frigging idea, and I love it. I think it's a big idea. It's a big notion. It's one of the things I said at D, which was I got from someone else here in Silicon Valley. I feel sometimes like there's a lot of big minds chasing very small ideas, and that's not inspiring. And I think people feel it. Like when you get to the 10th photo sharing app, as much as I'm a big fan of Instagram, you start to go, wait a minute, this is small, and it's not big thinking. And there's very smart people here, so it's disheartening.
And that would lead us to Mr. Zuckerberg, I
Yes.
think, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
The greatest success of the last 10 years in the Valley.
Sure.
Well, I mean, obviously Sergey and Elon and Larry would be more respected, but
Bezos is always left out.
Bezos, yeah, left out. But where do you put Zuckerberg in the Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Larry and Sergey, and Elon Musk parade?
Well, I think it remains to be seen what happens. Like, let's see how long it lasts. I think how long things last is a really important question. And believe me, technology doesn't last very long. I mean, look at, these things have very short shelf lives. I mean, if you really think about it, the one company that's the last tech mogul is kind of Larry Ellison. And he had a great interview last year at D, by the way.
Yeah.
He's been around since 1970.
He doesn't care what anybody thinks.
No, he doesn't. That's true.
That's what makes
true.
him great.
He does, and he's always been he's got a sense of
Yeah.
humor too, which is a nice quality among people, and it's self-deprecating, even though you don't
And he's
think of
not
him.
afraid to absolutely destroy his enemies at every
No.
chance he gets.
No, he doesn't, but he's funnier than you think. He's funnier
Yeah.
than you think, and very emotional, which I appreciate. But in a character.
So back
Yeah.
to Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
I mean, is he somebody that impresses you?
Yes, I am.
How?
He because
Why?
he's a learning organism, and I like anyone who's a learning. When he makes mistakes, it's not Spock-like exactly, but he corrects himself, and his inability, like his sweating thing at D. He went and
Oh
then
my God,
practiced.
tell us about that moment.
well,
What was that like on stage to
bad.
be the interviewer and you see the highest profile guy highest profile person at the event, because that was pre-IPO,
Yeah.
absolutely
No, it
have a
wasn't.
panic attack?
Was it?
It was pre-IPO.
Was it? Okay.
He had a full-on panic attack.
That's what it was, yes. That's what it
What are
looked
you
like.
thinking as the interviewer?
I was,
Do you feel guilt?
no.
You should.
No.
You should. You did it to
No,
him.
no, I
No,
didn't
I'm
do
joking.
it
You
to
did.
him. He was
Why did that happen?
I think he had, it must have been I don't know. I don't know why that happened. I think he was
You were
nervous.
grilling him.
Yeah, but not that. He had answered those questions the week before, and they weren't any different. So we had seen a thing of him in front of a bunch of press people, and it was exactly the same questions. So it wasn't like suddenly pulled out a question, you went, oh yes, that one, and then it was Law and Order,
So
and everyone
why
confessed.
did he start?
I don't know why he started sweating. I can't tell
Was
you.
it because he was in front of his peers, maybe? and
I
it
have
was-
no idea what caused it. I just know that when you started to see it, I felt like it was on that broadcast news, and the sweat was, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it was really, or like
Yeah.
you remember Tom Cruise in the Mission Impossible
Yeah.
where he catches the sweat?
Yeah.
It just was disturbing, and one of the problems was Walt was slightly further away. He was sitting here, and
Yeah.
Zuckerberg was here, so he didn't see the sweat going down his back like I did, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh goodness, that's not good.
You
That's not
were
good.
afraid he was going to pass out.
Yes, I was. He had a little white around. I thought, what if he passes out and I have to do a
CPR?
CPR on him? I did. It passed through my mind.
Would you
I'm
do
like,
it or no?
I guess I would if he was dying. But,
Pretty much.
I had a picture in my head, totally selfish, like me on the ground patting his face. Like, oh, that's not good.
Kara Swisher killed Zuckerberg.
I know, it wasn't good. It wasn't a good thing for
But
anybody.
somehow it doesn't seem so unbelievable.
I don't
in
want
fact.
I don't want to have an interview subject prone on the ground. That is not a goal of mine. You know what I mean? Unless it's like, I don't know, Assad, and I'd be happy to kick his ass. You know what I mean? But something like that, you don't want that to happen to anybody. It's not
No,
a good
I mean,
journalist doesn't want
everybody-
to kill people.
I think that's when people realized he was human, right? Like, I mean,
Yes, I think that was.
It was a
yes,
very human
Not
moment.
a good moment. What we tried to do, and I think we did successfully, is get that friggin' hoodie off. Which
Yeah.
he didn't want to take off initially.
You're like, "Give me that damn hoodie,
Give me the
kid."
hoodie, and I was trying to be a little. Someone said I was motherly for
You
the
were
first
very-
time.
it was-
Was I? I don't know. I just didn't, I literally was like,
weird.
this is disgusting, it has
Yeah.
to stop, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And then I was sort of debating, and this was going on all at the same time. I was like, should I get a towel? And I know Cheryl and others were like, should we bring a towel? Like, what should we do? And should I ask for one and call attention to it? It was one of those moments where, what do you do? And I think it was good that he took it off, and then we had the ability to make fun of his jacket because it had that Illuminati symbol in it.
And famously, the next year you made your own.
Right, exactly, we
With
did.
Walt's
but-
goatee.
Yes, that's true. But I was able to make a joke, and I did that on purpose so that he could calm down. And he did. And the rest of
He
the
did,
interview was
actually.
people didn't think of the rest of the interview. The rest of the interview was terrific. And so we give him a minute to go, just a second. I've collected, I don't know if you've ever been nervous on stage, but if you get a minute, people calm down.
Right.
And I think it was the right thing to do. We don't want to shame and embarrass people on stage. That's not our role.
Who's...
Except if you're up there, and then that's fine.
Yeah, that'd be just fine.
Yeah.
Who's the smartest investor you've met? Because you deal with a lot of the VCs, you deal with a lot of the angels. I know they're in your network. I know that's how you get a lot of your information, frankly. Who's the smartest?
Among them?
Yeah. Or amongst the smartest, if you want to rattle off the top three.
Among them. I've always had a lot of regard for Reid Hoffman. I think he's really thoughtful.
Wow.
I think he's made some really good investment. Like, he's smart. He thinks things through in a really, just a very systematic way. I think
He's thorough.
thorough. Yeah, he
Wow,
really
that's-
is. I just like talking to him. I learned something. Like, he says something. A lot of them are very glib and fast. And I think I call them sheeple VCs. Like, they just
Sheeple.
They don't have a new idea. Sheeple, people who are sheep.
Yeah.
Sheeple.
I'm getting it.
Yeah, okay, good. But they just follow, like, whatever the current trend is, and then they say it back at you. And since I see everybody, I'm like, I heard that last week, and I bet you heard that
Yeah.
where. And so,
Bitcoin.
he's another one. I think, oddly enough, Charles Einhorn.
Yep.
I don't talk to a lot of hedge fund people. I try to avoid it because life is way too short for that.
Right.
I think I always enjoy talking to him. It's a really enjoyable discussion, talking about his theories of investment. I find it really interesting. He has an unusual mind for a hedge fund person. I think he's thoughtful. I think Peter Chernin is someone I like to talk to. He has a really interesting mix between media and technology. He's sort of learning it. He's definitely is not a technology expert,
Right.
but he's, again, he was an operator. I prefer to talk to operators, people who've run things. I think that, I'm trying to think of a woman investor, there's so few of them that you can point to. I've always enjoyed talking to Mary Meeker, whatever. I mean, I don't agree
She's
with her all the
brilliant.
time. Yeah, I do. I mean, she can go off onto tangents and stuff like that that I don't agree with. But I met her
But
many
raw,
years ago.
raw
when
horsepower.
What?
Raw, like, intellectual
Yeah,
horsepower.
she just thinks a lot. And so,
Yeah.
again, I don't always agree with her, but boy, is it interesting to
Were you
talk to
saying
her.
you met her?
When she was an analyst back at,
Sure.
when I did my first AOL book in the early 90s, I met her. And she was, believe me, she was in her office at 10 o'clock at night. That's where she met me. We ate Chinese food and we talked all night. You know what I mean? This was early internet, and I think that was one of my favorite conversations. She was at Morgan Stanley, I think, yeah.
Looking at the moral compass of Silicon Valley, it was something, obviously, in the 70s. It was very counterculture. It was
Yep.
radical. Into the 80s, it became a big business. But even in the 90s, when the internet emerged, it was still a very artistic, radical, freedom of expression. It was going to make the world a better place. Has that changed a lot now? Do you
See, I don't agree with you that I think you're getting at, do they care about money now over,
Well, maybe not that they didn't care about money then, but that it felt like there was a higher purpose in addition to getting rich.
I guess more than other industries, I suppose, more than the people who make Pringles, yeah, I guess, I suppose. I from the beginning was irritated by that a little bit much, that it always did come down to the money, but they like to talk about, when they'd have different titles for them. I had a story in the Journal when I first got here, this was 96, where don't trust someone if they have a name like, Chief Excitement Officer or something like that, some idiot title, you know what I mean? We're not in this for money, we're in it for, change the world. I don't think you change the world through, a chat app. I just don't think you do. I think you change the world by solving cancer, by, helping poor people. I mean, a lot of what Bill Gates is doing now. I think now is his best time because he's taken what he did before and using it for something.
Do you think ultimately Gates will be remembered for Microsoft or for the foundation?
Foundation. It's like Andrew Carnegie. I think it's very similar.
Yeah.
And good. That's great. I think he's changed a lot. I didn't get along with Bill Gates very well for a long time. He was very difficult to talk to, very dismissive, rude, very, he has a bit of he has an affect that's incredibly rude, actually. And he's gotten to be a really interesting person, I think, since he started to do this. He's changed and become somewhat, I just had a conversation with him the other day about vaccines I was fascinated with, and it was actually a nice conversation.
Huh.
It was and interesting, like it was how to deliver vaccine, the technology of delivering vaccines, and I felt like, I just felt like he was doing something that he really loved now, instead of just competing for no good reason, like the sort of obsessive competition.
Right.
Do
you ever aspire to write outside of technology? Do you ever think, because you're a fantastic interviewer, you're a great writer, do you ever think of taking on other verticals?
Yes, I do. Yeah. I've been writing. No, I don't, because I really love technology. It's like, years ago there was a writer for where I started the Washington Post, where I was an employee for many years. There was a writer named Henry Mitchell. He wrote about gardening, daffodils and posies and mulch. But he wasn't writing about gardening, he was writing about life. You know what I mean? It was so deep what he was writing, and it was always about daffodils, but it wasn't. And so I love the way he turned, for me, whatever avenue you happen to be writing about life, it's a great way to do it. And I do a lot of deals and stuff that's just very ephemeral, but technology interests me and I have a passion for it. And so I'm never not interested in it. Like you said, do you get bored? I never get bored.
Right.
I just don't. And the day I do, I'll leave. Like, by the way,
Right.
You won't see me. I'll go, bye, Jason, I'll see you later.
Right.
I think about every now and then writing a novel about Silicon Valley, which I think would be fantastic.
Oh my, that would be fantastic.
I mean, I could write Valleywag in my sleep, the stuff I know. So sorry, Sam, I'm not going to tell you those things. But I think a really great novel about Silicon Valley, using Silicon Valley as a backdrop, would be fantastic.
You have a title in mind?
Not yet. I'm thinking about it a lot lately. I keep taking notes of things I know about people and just writing them down suddenly, so be careful. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, no.
But that'll be my, Truman Capote swan song, but I won't be sad and pathetic, that. I won't be sad that
Burn
I'm
all
not
the bridges
friends
on
with
your
you
way
all.
out?
No, but it's like, how what was he writing? Answered prayers or unanswered prayers, or whatever, and then people saw pieces of it, and then he was ostracized by the society ladies that he so coveted and he was writing about.
Right.
I'll be perfectly fine not to talk to any of you again once I write it. I'll be I'm in Hawaii at my giant estate with my best-selling novel, so I'm enjoying it. But no, but I think I think I'd like to write something because I think there's a lot, the way technology has changed our society. I've always thought this. The minute I saw the internet, I thought it was the greatest, most important communications. And I had been a student of communications mediums. And so I thought this was, at the heart of how our world was going to change, that this worldwide communications medium, accessible to everybody on inexpensive devices, was such an important thing. And so I really am inspired by it, which is why I stay in it.
Let's take a couple of questions from the audience. I think we have a microphone. And we do. There we go. Kieran's got a microphone. If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand and ask a concise question.
Or long-winded.
And by the way, the way not to ask a question is, hi, I do recruiting for a recruiting company, Acme.
Don't tell them how to ask a question.
And I would like to know, Kara, what do you think of my recruiting company? Don't do a commercial in your question.
They don't want to ask.
All the hands go down. Give it another shot. Yeah.
Check.
Thanks for the interview. This is wonderful. For aspiring journalists, are there still employers looking to pay professional journalists professional wages?
Yes.
Or are they doomed for I won't mention the names?
No, we're going to be doubling in size, I think, soon. So yes, I think it's just that journalists have to get more creative and entrepreneurial, and I think that's the problem. There's not a less risk-taking crowd than a bunch of journalists who like to tell everyone how to run their businesses, and then couldn't run a business to save their life. Walt and I run a business, and we're very involved in our business, and we make decisions that make or break that business, and we've been rather successful over the years, but every single part of D is run by Walt and Kara. So, we don't sell the ads, but we make sure that they're sold in the right way. We create the product around it. We keep the church and state line in that area very strong, but about our audience, our programming, everything else we do on the site, we're very entrepreneurial, and I think journalists just have to get entrepreneurial like the rest of the world. And that's an interesting question, does everyone have to be entrepreneurial now?
Yeah.
They kind of do. You kind of do in all the job. You can't just go to an office now and just sit there and just stamp things. The successful people in the future have to have an element of entrepreneurism no matter what they're in. And can we create a culture of entrepreneurism throughout the culture, not just, because these jobs in big factories and these jobs in big offices aren't going to exist. You can just see
Do you
it.
think we're moving to a lower employment
Yes,
world?
yes.
And what do you think that means
I don't
for
know. I
society?
think about it. I was listening to the president talk about how we're going to create jobs. He's not creating a fucking job to save his life. You know what I mean? He's just, the government is not going to create jobs for you. It's going to be, it's a very different job creation cycle. It has to be through entrepreneurial activities that create products that people want to use, and not all stupid, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be a journalistic product, and I hate to use the term product with journalism, but we're creating something people want to read, and that's how I think about it. I have a theory right now among these apps. I'm thinking a lot about the app economy, where does it go? Because it gets to be too big, and there's no way, it's just unsustainable the way you think about it. I think about big thoughts all the time, these big giant thoughts about app economies, but I think that you have to either be delightful or useful, or both is great, but you really have to be one of those two things. Twitter is useful and somewhat delightful to me. Instagram is delightful. I enjoy it. There's something about it that's enjoyable. And so when we're thinking about getting back to journalism, I think journalists have to be both those things now. And I think too many journalists have spent their time just vomiting up information and not making it interesting, willfully boring their constituents. Really, seriously, I'm writing as boring as I can. I'm writing without interest. I'm writing without personality, without analysis.
Or without research, or shaking
without research.
trees.
That's, one of the things we do
Well, that's
is...
the useful,
yes,
right?
But, I'd rather have at least some analysis over absolute, press release kind of thing. So what we do at All Things D is we try to do, I say reported analysis when we do analysis. You're not going to do an analysis on our site, one of our reporters, unless you have a great deal of reporting behind it. So when you say it, it's born in reporting, which is great. And one of the things I hated about working for newspapers, the Journal, the Washington Post, wherever I worked, and this was, I call it the to be sure statement in the Journal. To be sure, some people think WebMD, what was the one that crashed?
No, it wasn't WebMD, they made it.
Yeah, one of them
WebVan.
did. WebVan. To be sure, some people feel WebVan is the way of the future. I'm like, no, it isn't. It's a fucking mess over there.
Right.
So, you know what I mean?
And
I
which
remember.
people are we talking about?
Well,
Yeah.
the Journal wanted that. When I was writing a story about it, it was one of the companies, and I was like, this is a disaster. I've done all the reporting. It's a disaster. They're spending too much money. Their balance sheet is crazy.
It's unsustainable.
It's unsustainable, and let's just say it. Let's just say it, because I have done the reporting that proves that it's unsustainable. They wanted that paragraph in. To be sure, some people feel no.
Was that because they were trying to put balance in the article?
Whatever, but it was crap. It was I don't
Because
know.
does that annoy you too, with this sense that we have to balance the story? It can't be, because sometimes people don't want to be all good, and sometimes it is all good.
You cannot be unfair. That's the difference between balancing. That's why my Yahoo reporting is successful, because I said, that sucks what's going on over there with Scott Thompson. Guess what? That sucks. And I did it by reporting it. But I did not say with the
To be sure, some people at
some
Yahoo
people feel
love
that
Scott
lying
Thompson
on resumes
lying
is
on
not
his
a
resume.
problem. But to be sure, it is a problem. And so we never said it wasn't a problem. So I think that if journalists just say they go back to their little cubicles, and then with each other, it's horrible in political reporting, they say what they really think happened, and it never gets in the newspaper. And the stuff they say here is super interesting.
Right.
Do you know? And it's super smart, and it's based in, and so what they say here is what I want on our pages at All Things D. I want that to happen. And so I think that anyone who's going to journalism has to be a great reporter and stick to the way you do. Just like you are a great painter, you know how to paint an apple. You have to know how to paint a friggin' apple. But once you do that, you should be creative in how you deliver it.
Are you guys going to spin All Things D out? I mean, there's been so much reporting and
There
talk about
has.
that. Or it is separate.
Yes.
But what's the
No, it's not.
what's
It's
the
not
status of it? News Corp owns 100% of it.
That's right.
And you do all the work.
No, we created it.
You created it. News
Yes.
Corp owns it.
Yes.
So is there?
I do rather well for myself with it, but I'm not going to go into it. But it's in a nice. The contract is a nice contract.
Well,
They've been generous. Well, they haven't been generous.
but
I
there
created
is
it,
no
but-
All Things D without you and Walt.
Really?
I would argue, of course. There's
Well,
no D conference without the two of you.
I do not own the brand.
Okay.
Okay. That's all I can say. I don't own the
Yeah.
brand. And the contract is up in December, so we'll see.
So there's a negotiation going on now.
Not really.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, then you could easily, given your connections, raise money and start All Things D Part 2, or a better version of it.
Do you have money?
All of your friends do.
Oh, I would not take any money from Silicon Valley people.
Well, I mean,
not
Meg works at Google. I think she's done okay.
I'm not getting money
She could
from
fund
Megan.
it.
It's Megan, by the way.
I know,
I'm not
Megan.
taking a cent of her money, and by the way, our money's separate. No, I wouldn't take her money either.
You know every VC. You could instantly
I wouldn't
raise
take
money.
it. I have been offered money from every VC, and I've turned it all down.
So what happens?
There's no way we're taking a money from Silicon Valley VCs. No way.
Okay.
There's other money.
High net worth individual. Mark Cuban says you're the greatest.
Mark
I like
Cuban has internet affiliations, so.
it. Barely.
Well,
I mean, I think he's got an internet
all right,
connection.
we'll debate Mark Cuban.
Or anyway, Ron Burkle says here's $100 million, go, $50 million, go.
Wow, that would be great.
He could. You know him.
Yeah, he could.
Okay.
I don't know him that well.
Well, let's
He
take a
actually
note.
doesn't like me for a reason. He came to me during the Yahoo thing and says, "Why are you so mean about the company? Why are you so mean to its board members?" I said, because you screw shareholders on a daily basis, and I find it offensive, and
Wow.
too bad." So anyway,
Next question.
next question. But I do like his lifestyle. I think it's fun.
This could be the perfect follow-up to this, because there was a couple of videos that went viral over the past 3 weeks about a very, very famous inventor, Thomas Edison's nemesis, as a matter of
Oh,
fact,
yeah, with the VCs?
Nikola Tesla.
Yeah.
And he was pitching Silicon Valley VCs, and a lot of startup people like us in the room really identified with this.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, you were involved in this because you
I saw.
leaked the valuation. And
Right.
we just want to know what sort of relationship you have with Mark Twain, and what you thought about leaking this
Mark Twain?
valuation. But more importantly, what did you think
Tesla.
about when talking about VCs and startups, about the scenarios highlighted in those videos?
Oh, you mean the difficulty of getting I just called them sheeple, didn't I? Like, I find sometimes, there's a lot of fantastic venture capitalists, by the way. There are, like in anything else. But in general, I joke that VCs were like Justin Bieber fans. Like, they run after, like the next thing. And so when one becomes an interesting investor is when they take a different tack. And there's like someone I really like, Michael Deering. You don't know him. I wrote a piece about him, the most successful VC you've never met. You don't know about. He's very quiet. He's invested in all kinds of companies. He's a former eBay executive. He's had a very interesting operating career. Very quiet. Another guy, Steve Anderson from Baseline. He was involved in Instagram. I find him to be really thoughtful. He always goes off the beat. He goes off. He thinks for himself, and sometimes he ends up in the same place as everybody else, but his process seems to be really smart. Like, he thinks things through. And because I believe he worked at Microsoft. He was an operator. So I prefer to talk to VCs who are operators before anyone else. And it's just, I just feel like they would jerk Nikola Tesla around. Don't you think they would? He would have a problem.
Oh my God, with the iPhones out during the
Yeah.
meeting is just
Right. You know, that kind of thing. That drives me nuts.
Shades of Dave McClure.
Yeah. But does he do that? I don't know. I don't pay
No,
him.
I mean Dave McClure. Who was here for that was a good question. How many people were here for Dave McClure? Good, we got a loyal audience.
He doesn't use.
How many people have been here for 3 this week in Startups Live?
Oh, aren't you
And how many
popular,
people have been here
Jason?
for 4? All right, I love you guys.
How many people really like Jason?
No.
He needs a big. He needs a really big
It's a
group
small,
hug.
The group is getting smaller.
He
as we
needs a
go.
big group hug.
Another
He shouldn't.
question.
He has a beautiful family. He should feel good about himself.
I'm very proud of that, actually. I do. Yeah.
My kid's over there.
Yeah.
Louie, are you bored? Should I tell the story about you spending $3,000 on your iPhone by accident?
Oops. Was it on Clash of Clans?
Clash of Clans.
I was just playing Clash of Clans with him.
Yeah, Clash
Yeah,
of Clans.
I have my Clash of Clans here.
He literally spent $3,000 in 15 minutes. It was incredible.
And I could just picture that. Brrr. Hello, Tim.
Yeah, no, I called them. Because,
You need to
there was
put-
a problem with the in-store app. It was an error. They just
Whoa.
changed over payment.
Crazy.
As
Another
much
question.
as I love my son, he's not smart enough to spend $3,000 in 15 minutes on Clash
No,
of Clans.
I don't think anybody can.
I love you, sweetie, but you know.
Yeah. Next question. Go ahead.
He's
Two more
really good
questions.
on Instagram, by the way. Louis Swisher, you should follow
Quick
him.
question.
Biggest surprise of the last 2 years for you?
Biggest surprise?
The last 24 months.
Last what?
Of the last
The
2
last
years.
24.
He picked weird time frames. Yeah, 2 years specifically.
The reemergence of photo sharing apps, you know, Instagram, I guess. I just
Yeah.
wrote a piece for Vanity Fair on Instagram that I was fascinated by that company, and I thought it was interesting that I thought photo sharing apps were kind of not going. That's just a symbol thing. The biggest surprise, I guess, the collapse, the kind of trouble Microsoft's gotten in, how they didn't react to changes as quickly as they should have. I'm surprised. They seem rather
They've been
slow.
pretty nimble. of
Yes,
late.
but recently.
Yeah.
I just think that was an interesting one. Among the big companies,
You think Steve Ballmer is going to retire at some point, or is he just going to go down swinging?
I think he leaves when Gates tells him to leave. That's when,
Oh,
everybody-
really?
Yeah, when he does. I mean, a lot of people have written the death of Steve Ballmer at Microsoft about 14 times over the
Yeah.
past 10 years. That's a family company. I don't know how else to put it. He'll go when Gates asks him to go, and I don't think that's
You think they'll
necessarily-
split that company up, like spin out Xbox?
A lot of people think they should. There's a lot of pressure right now among investors. I'm trying to think what else is surprising. Unfortunately, I'm not as surprised as I should be in life. I wish I was more surprised by things.
Another question? Last question? Okay, here we go.
So thanks for the interview, and I wanted to ask the question about the content. So you said about the quality of journalism and the quality of the content by itself, but the market is growing with a really high speed, and in 2 years it will be double.
Yeah?
And what do you think about the controlling the content across the web?
The what?
About the controlling of the content across the web by the journalists and actually brands who created this content?
With the control of what? I'm not.
Content.
Oh, the control of content. I think the content is actually in control of many more people than it used to. I mean, you think it's in one place?
No, not in one place. I mean that when the content is being spreaded
Yeah.
to other sites and it's actually lose your name, lose the quality.
Yeah.
What do you think about?
I don't think that's the case. I don't think that because it spreads, you lose quality. I think you see a lot more bad quality, but I don't think, look, the New York Times had a lot of problems with that war they started. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like major, I mean, the Washington Post had several. I love the Washington Post, but Janet Cook was there. They had another one. Every major media organization has had problems over the past 10 years, and that's just mistakes were made kind of thing. And so I think the content spreading all over the place is fantastic. I've never been happier in journalism than not working at a big organization. I mean, all things D, you were talking about this relationship with Dow Jones, is we're separate. We run on a WordPress system. We make all our decisions. We never talk to them except for, we interface over ads and how we're going to sell.
And December.
What?
And December.
And December. But we're, we have a very independent, it's interesting, for all of the complaints about Rupert Murdoch, he's never intervened in anything we've done, really. He's never intervened, not once.
And he's come to D.
Yes, he's come to D. He was on the road show for the new News Corp this year. They're splitting up News Corp. But I think it's great that there's content things all over I think it's so fantastic and it's so invigorating for journalism. And I think people complaining about the death of journalism are complaining about a system that never worked anymore. Like they're complaining, it's kind of like complaining about, I'm trying to think of like, oh, nobody wants to buy horses anymore. What are the stables going to do because of these newfangled cars? Like, so, too bad, stable people. That's the way it goes. You know what I mean? And the way they do journalism. I worked at the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, both in their heydays. And by the way, I saw Ben Bradley the other day in Washington, who looks fantastic. One of my great inspirations of all time is Ben Bradley. He was the legendary editor of the Washington Post, and still as spry and interesting as ever. But that's gone. His era is gone, and that was fantastic when he was running it. But newsrooms have become antiquated. They become slow. They become non-responsive. They haven't embraced tools, and in lots of ways, they deserve to, for new things to come up. And I think what we're doing, I think the problem is that journalists sort of shrug their shoulders. Old media journalists or traditional journalists. Oh, what are we going to do?
They're not really motivated to solve the problem.
Oh, nobody wants journalism.
I mean, in a way,
not...
News Corp owns All Things D and the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal gets their ass kicked on a technology basis by All Things D on a regular basis.
Thank you. It's true.
That's the.
Yes, we got the Tumblr story. Yes, we broke the Tumblr story. We break a lot of stories because we're journalists, but it doesn't have to be in that format. And so you're sad for a format that doesn't work anymore. Just the way, are you sad because we don't have, I'm too old, but...
fax machines?
Not fax machines, before that. Mimeographs. Are we sad
Yeah.
there's no mimeographs? No, we're not sad there's no mimeographs. There's just no more And I'm sorry for the mimeograph society, but that's the way it goes. I'm not really that sorry for them. But so I think the issue is, things have changed, and most mainstream media organizations have not reacted. They resisted an email. When I put an email at the bottom of my Washington Post articles, everyone was like, why would you do that? Readers are going to contact you.
Hello.
And I was, literally, someone said that to me, and I was like, well, you know, they know more than we do, and maybe someone will give me a good tip. And I was like, go away, move away from me. Like, and they didn't want to embrace social things. They, you know, someone at the journal or one of the publications was like, do you really think you should be doing that Twitter thing so much? And I was like, fuck you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yes, I do.
Rupert Murdoch.
Like, interacting with readers, being available. It's just, you know, I'm not young, but it doesn't mean that I can't embrace new things. And so it's not that we've been giving up ground to crappy people for no good fucking reason. Like, why? Why not have the great people enter it and use these tools, which are fantastic and easy and inexpensive, and be part of what the change rather than bemoaning the change. And then you could be part of rising the quality, rising the standards, and standing for people. And it seems to me that if you do that, people follow you. I firmly believe nobody wants to. My grandfather had a saying: if you're hungry, you'll eat dog food. But why give them dog food? Why not give them something really great? And so, yes, they will. People will eat crap if you give them crap. But if you give them great stuff, everyone I know goes to the great stuff. And so instead of journalists whining about what's happened to them, they just have to jump in and be risk-taking. And it's worked for me. I've done rather well, and so has Walt. And Walt is like, Walt's had 3 iterations of his career. He was a Defense Department reporter. He was a State Department. He was a national security reporter. And then he switched he was headed for the top of that particular world, and he changed it because computers were his passion.
Yeah.
So that's what we need more of in journalism, seems to me. And then if we have that, people love news. People love news.
On
And
that
that's-
note, tremendous guest.
Thank you, Jason.
And tremendous honesty. Thank you. Let's give it up for Paris Swisher. All right, and thank you to WeWork, and we'll see you all next time.
Good interview.
Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you.
Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Walker Corporate Law, a boutique corporate law firm specializing in the representation of entrepreneurs. To find out more, visit their site at walkercorporatelaw.com. And Xero, are you still managing your books the old-fashioned way? Put the pleasure back into doing business with Xero's beautiful online accounting software. Go to Xero.com and use the promo code TWIST13 to get 6 months for free.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get to